Praise be to Allah. So we're here again to complete our discussion. Just to review quickly, our discussion is focused on the movement of the moral conscience toward its intended conclusion. And the suggestion in that is to say that the human life, the human purpose, and human identity is essentially a discussion on the moral conscience. And the true human is the highest expression of creation. And human life comes out of the material universe, the material world. We come out of the material world, but out of the material world comes expression, and we are that expression. And the moral conscience identifies the purpose of creation itself. And so it has a destiny, a conclusion that is realized in social establishments that require social excellence. It's very interesting to me that not much is, I don't hear, and I think I'm pretty well informed, try to keep myself informed, but I don't hear much coming from the Muslim world or from Muslim leadership with regard to the principle or idea of ma'aruf, which is the acknowledgement and promotion of the highest standards of excellence, highest standards of human excellence. And this concept or principle is in the Quran many places. It is in the Quran as a remedy. It is in the Quran as a theme of conduct. It is in the Quran as an aspiration. It is in the Quran as an identification of Islamic community. Allah says in the Quran, and you have heard this many times from me, and this was a common reference of Imam W. Deen Mohammed in his preaching and teaching, that the Quran says of the community of Muslims that you are the best community, established or brought out, ukhrijat linnas, brought out for mankind. Brought out, that's important. Brought out, ukhrijat linnas. And it continues, the verse continues that this community is distinguished because of its promotion of ma'aruf. Ma'aruf. But it's important to acknowledge that you are brought out. Khayra ummatan ukhrijat linnas. You are the best community brought out for mankind. Brought out of what is the question? is a question, brought out of ignorance, brought out of confusion, distinguished from darkness. That is the darkness of ignorance. And what is ignorance and darkness? It's the absence of light, the absence of the role of light and guidance. So, the promotion of excellence, the establishment of excellence, and we're talking about social excellence, which is a reference to how human beings treat each other, the regard that we have for one another, and what defines that. And what accountability, how we understand the role of accountability in upholding that excellence. What obligations do we have to uphold that excellence? Can we legitimately refer to ourselves as an Islamic community and not be promoting or distinguishing ourselves upon that spirit of social excellence and pursuit of social excellence? Have we fulfilled the purpose if that's not our objective? Muhammad, the Prophet, the prayers and the peace be on him, once he arrived at Medina, that was called another name before he got there. It was called another name. It became Medina when he got there. His teaching was no more hijrah, no more fleeing, only taqwa wa jihad. Only taqwa wa jihad. Consciousness, regardfulness, and defense, struggle for that. And together, what does that constitute? And we can make this, don't have to prolong this part, we don't have to prolong this for several hours. We can make this very straight and clear with no trouble at all. The jihad is to defend taqwa. It is to defend the moral conscience. That's what it's about. It is to establish decency as a rule. It is to establish the promotion of ma'aruf as the guiding or leading principle in Islamic community identity. That is the distinguishing factor. All the other things that we associate with the excellence of Islam and the influence of Islam, for example, advances in the sciences, even superiority in weapons of war. If we look at, not that I want to particularly focus upon this, but it's important that it's understood that even the development of weapons, and I mentioned this a little bit last time, was out of respect for the demand of the moral conscience. So the precision of the weapons that were developed to defend the Islamic society were weapons not to inflict pain and suffering, but they were weapons of mercy. And the spirit with which they were developed and used was not to advance or conquer, but it was to defend. This point has to be made. And how do we know certain things? We know under the leadership of Omar, the companion of the Prophet, may Allah be pleased with him. Under his leadership, after Prophet Muhammad had passed away, many advances were made in terms of territorial expansion of the Islamic community. And we're given a picture of Omar, who had been previously a kind of impetuous personality, emotional and quick to anger. We see him in his leadership role reflecting on Muhammad the Prophet's example, a very patient and thoughtful man, and a man who once criticized for his aggressiveness, now seen often weeping. In fact, it's said that he weeps so often that the salt from the tears stained his face. What was he weeping? Asking Allah for forgiveness. He was not comfortable with the expansion and the spirit of the expansion. And my study of him convinces me of this. He was not comfortable with it. The character of it. Not that he wasn't a formidable and committed leader of the Islamic community in the spirit of Prophet Muhammad's leadership. He was that. And not that he was afraid or reticent or unable to decide, indecisive. He wasn't that kind of person. He was firm. But he more than a few times dismissed the leaders of the military. He dismissed them from their role, changed them often. He was often making changes in the governors of the new areas, not satisfied with their leadership. And if you study it carefully, you'll perhaps come to the same conclusion that I have come to, that the character of the Islamic community as it was growing was less and less reflecting the personality of Muhammad the Prophet. Bilal, may Allah be pleased with him, almost immediately after Prophet Muhammad passed away, he was sensitive that there was going to be a change, and he did not accept to stay in Medina. We can't see this history and pretend that it doesn't have a message for us. It's not enough for us to speak morality or talk morality or just to make claim to morality without defining its focus. There's a focus and there is a pathway. And the focus and the pathway are defined by the objective. And the objective is the highest standards of excellence. So Medina becomes Al-Munawwarah, the city of the light, or the city of enlightenment, because it represents, under Prophet Muhammad's leadership, the establishment in society of the moral conscience as a ruler. Khalifa, which means that the original nature of man is respected. The role of that nature is respected. The necessity of the support from the intellect that has come into contact with divine guidance and has positioned, focused, and disciplined the nature, now qualifies to be set upon the throne of rule with the demand of excellence on it. Excellence not in a void, but excellence in the context of faith in God. So let me make that very clear. More than any other characteristic of Islamic society, the most important matter that is established is faith. And I repeat the words from the Quran. Our Lord, we have heard a caller calling us to faith. Believe you in your Lord. فَأَمَنَّا. Then therefore, we have believed. So faith and freedom to practice faith, that is the biggest, most important characteristic in the evolution of human society. And the aims of the highest standards of human excellence, supported by the evolution and development of the moral conscience upon the nature of man, is what Islam is concerned about. And everything else that we think about that's associated with Islam is realized or understood in the context of that. So there is no jihad outside of moral excellence. There's no political jihad. There's no such thing. The political movements, if they don't support common decency, if they're not reflective of the verse in the Quran that says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ, that you have in the messenger of God the standard of human behavior. For what? And this is the defining characteristic. For what? لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمُ الْآخِرَةِ. For any who look to God, want to turn to God, asking for God, yearning for God. Yarjullah, this is what it means. Wal yawmul akhirah, and the last day. Meaning what? That the moral conscience has been established where the believer is building their conduct, the credibility of their conduct. Meaning, what am I speaking of? The conduct. I'm speaking of the social destiny, their interest in social establishments. This is conduct. This is what I'm referring to, all right? That which is necessary to establish the just, enlightened society. That this conduct forms as a consequence of faith and recognition that you have to answer to God. That's what it means. Yearn for God, and the day of judgment, or the day of the last day, meaning you're looking for an opportunity to present yourself before God with the expectation that He will accept you, with the hope that He will accept you. You are recognizing the reality that at some point you have to answer for your conduct, that you are accountable. When I listen to the language of Islamic leadership, Muslim, so-called Islamic leadership, Muslim leadership in the world, it doesn't reflect in my ears or it doesn't sound in my ears in the spirit that it is thinking about or respecting that you have to answer for what you're preaching. You have to answer for what you're inviting people to. You have to answer for your conduct, your behavior, your decision making. You have to answer for it. When I listen to Muslim leadership, I don't hear that. I hear well, in many respects, I hear immaturity and even the lack of acceptance of responsibility and accountability. Now, does that separate people from God's help? No, not necessarily. It can, but it doesn't necessarily. God's time is different from our time. What time it is on our watch or clock is different from God's time and what is in His plan. So some people's, their time is shorter than others. Some people have long period of time to get their act together because of circumstances, and others don't, have less of an excuse. Others have less of an excuse, and their time runs out seemingly quicker. Prophet Muhammad, he said, this is one of his sayings, as a counsel to one of his companions. Taqwallahi wa husnul khuluq. Simple statement, straightforward statement. Be regardful of Allah and have good character. A man came to the Prophet, and he might have. I'm taking some liberties, all right, not wanting to be disrespectful, but I'm imagining the circumstances. This man, this person, and I think he was a young person. He came to the Prophet, kind of in a smart, know-it-all way, as youth can be. I know something. I have a question for you, messenger of God. Tell me something only you can tell me. This is what he said. Tell me something only you can tell me. And the Prophet, he said to him, Qul amantu billahi thumma istaqim. Say, I believe in Allah, I have faith in Allah. And then after that, be straight. Be straight. Stand upon decency. So that's what it means to have faith in Allah. This is the definition of faith in Allah. Mustaqim. Over time, not that you can't accept responsibility from the time you say you have faith, You accept responsibility from the time you say you have faith. But the movement toward proper conduct, proper thinking, is a process. It's a process. It evolves over the spirit of the people and the life of the people over time. So the migration from Mecca to Medina was a migration to free the moral conscience, to free it. Already, Prophet Muhammad had established the excellence of the nature. He elevated upon that. He ascended upon that. And he was shown the possibilities for the moral life in the context of the nature of man. He was shown that. And his view of it, his perspective was certain. It was clear. And the Quran says, Watin, by the fig, Wazaytun, and the olive, Waturi Sinin, and the mountain Sinai, وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ, and this society of security, this society of trust, this society of faith. The pathway. And I'm not going to go into the details of it because it would take us a while to really go into all the details of it. But that pathway accommodates a complete discussion on the mission of Jesus Christ, peace be on him, and Moses, peace be on the prophets. Major figures in defining moral life on this earth. One associated with moral life as expressed in the spirit, and the other associated with moral life as it wants to express itself in society, and a completion for that. وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ. Now let me make this point. The learned people, most of them, they say that the Balad al-Amin is Mecca, the city of security is Mecca. Imam Deen Mohammed says that the Balad al-Amin is Medina. Now, would he differ with the learned people, the scholars, if they were to challenge him on that? No, he wouldn't have differed with them. But he would still hold to his point of view. It wasn't his way to be argumentative. We once had the name Muslim American Society. And he had that name and thought of that long before any of these immigrant Muslims thought of themselves as Muslim Americans. Imam W. Muhammad was calling himself and calling us Muslim Americans going back to the 70s. In fact, he participated at the Williamsburg Charter Foundation, and when he signed the document, he signed it Imam in the Society of Muslim Americans. And that was in the early 80s. Long before they thought of themselves as that. But another group came up calling itself the Muslim American Society. And the person who was the founder of that group wanted to take issue with Imam W. Muhammad and our use of that term. And he wanted to argue the point. And I was present when this happened. It was in Baltimore. He wanted to argue the point. And the Imam said, no. He said, you take the name. And they took it. That's what they wanted. It wasn't affecting the Imam in any way at all, you know. Take it. That's what you want. That's what's important to you. Take it. And then we became the American Society of Muslims. That's how we were referred to after that. So it wasn't his spirit to be argumentative with any of them. But he held to his purpose. And I am saying to you all that in his reference and understanding of the processes to respect the nature, to bring the nature that is the Khalifa, the original true human, respecting that true human properly and bringing, by processes, bringing that human to have contact with the light of guidance, is the formation of the moral conscience, the crystallization and the focus of the purpose of the moral conscience. But the moral conscience doesn't exist in a vacuum just to exist. It exists for purpose. It exists to lead and to rule. And the setting for that leadership and that rule must be a progression from the original. The progression from Mecca through to Masjid Al-Aqsa and finally to Medina, Al-Munawwarrah. And that process is the security. And every human community must take a share of responsibility to evolve mankind in this direction upon the establishment built and brought into existence by Prophet Muhammad's own moral conscience. This is the standard of Islamic leadership. And this is the foundation for the construction of Islamic society. And I believe that if I've given a little while and had the resources to do it and the time, that I could put together a document. Maybe not as much as not as a book necessarily, but maybe a book showing the parallels of this process as it has played out in the life of the African American people. With scholarly references, all right? Now, when I was in prison, I had time, you know, and I didn't have resources, but I had time. And those books that I wrote while I was in prison, you know, they were scholarly works, especially the first one. A lot of references, a lot of support. Nobody can argue those references. That's why nobody has argued it. Right, exactly. That's very true. That is very true. I know of people that have gone to the government with my book. They didn't say it was my book. They just stole from it and went and got all kinds of help, financial help from government. I know it for a fact. The same, it took language directly from the book. No shame whatsoever. But if it's good, then it's in the plan of Allah. And that's how I see it. That's why I didn't have any, when I found out about it, I didn't react with anger or anything. I said, well, they can benefit from it. Wonderful. But I believe that this movement in the soul of the African American people is parallel to the establishment of God's covenant with Muhammad the Prophet. And if that's true, if I'm right about that, then that places our leadership in the category of what Prophet Muhammad predicted, that there would be a personification, a material establishment with leadership that would be the embodiment of moral conscience and the role of guidance. Now that has a name in Islam. It has a name. I won't say what the name is, but it has a name. There's a reference, a clear reference, the personification of guidance, the movement of guidance. Munawwarah is the movement of light. The movement of light. From the word nur. Nur means light. Munawwarah is the movement of light, the processes of light, and the effect of light. You can't say Medina to a pious, conscientious Muslim who's an Arabic speaker. If you say Medina, you have to make it clear what you're talking about. Medina to Nabi. No, now they know what you're talking about. The city of the Prophet. Medina Al-Munawarrah. Now they know what you're talking about. But Medina, that's not good enough. Medina could be any place, any city. And Medina Al-Munawarrah is singled out. It is Islamic society. It is the model society. The model. You know, the model must be formed and fixed to the form so that it be suitable and it will last. Its form is sustained. So there's a process, you know, a person who's a potter or works with pottery or any craftsman. There's a process to bring that form into existence, right? And part of it is light, fire, heat. Well, I was going to say something, but I have to be conscious of the audience. Not you all here, but others that might be watching. Yes, so as I said, it don't have to take a long time. I think that's clear. Uh, I could spend a whole lot of time on the fig and the olive and the mountain Sinai, but I think most of us, we've had a good education, a very good education in understanding these things from Imam W. Deen Mohammed. We know generally what it's talking about. The area where many of us get in trouble is understanding Balad al-Amin and not feeling confident that we can accept Imam W. Muhammad's conclusion that the Balad al-Amin is Medina. We don't have to argue the point. The proof is in our own establishment. If we bring into existence the model Islamic society that is built upon that recognition that Imam W. Muhammad pointed to, then who will say that we are wrong? Who will say that that interpretation will not be the new interpretation of Balad al-Amin based upon our efforts? The interpretation would have to change, wouldn't it? And that is the inspiration and the movement and the proof that the moral conscience must rule. The might and the power belongs to Allah. And He will determine what is acceptable. He will favor those that uphold the principle of social moral excellence. He says that. And that process first begins with a people who have come to value, by way of troubled circumstances, their humanity. And in that process of discovering their humanity for the first time, they find their Lord. And upon finding their Lord, they find what? Guidance. And the marriage of the nature to guidance is the secure society, the just society. No people on this earth, in our lifetimes, and in the memory of our people, as a people, have spoken more to the need for the just society. That language comes most eloquently from the African American people. Frederick Douglass, a man born in slavery, no formal education, and yet inspired, where the sophistication of his language was such that it put America in its high claims to shame. And his whole focus was, you hypocritical America. You hold yourself high up before the nations as the guarantor and high defender of human potential. And he said this in his speech. But your behavior toward your subjects, your slaves, in spite of your claims, would shame a nation of savages. How did such language form in the intellect of a slave with no formal education, except that God had a plan for him and his people? And we can go from there and show you others moving in that direction. Let me share something with you, personal. I didn't know this. I learned something actually this week about my relatives, my grandfather, one of my grandfathers, my mother's father. I knew him very well. I knew him, I spent a lot of time with him, and I knew his work. I knew the work he had. He worked at a steel mill. But I was listening to a conversation this week between my mother and my aunt, her sister. And she said that my grandmother could recognize all of the men in that town who worked at that steel mill. And the way she could recognize them was that all of them were bent over like this. She said, now my grandfather, toward the end of his life, he was bent over like that too. And she said, the reason why they were bent over like that is because they were forced to do the work that they were doing, which was pouring steel into molds, make parts for machines, and especially during World War II, for the necessity to support the war effort, that they were forced to stand in that environment with ceilings that were very low. And so they had to be like this for hours and hours and hours. I didn't know that until I listened to my mother and my aunt talking to each other. And I thought to myself, this man had an interest in Elijah Muhammad. And I know it because he told me. He told me as a little boy, when I was just a little boy, 4, maybe 5 years old. He talked to me about Elijah Muhammad, believe it or not. He had an interest in Elijah Muhammad. He certainly sensitized me. I know that reference resonated with me. And my other grandfather, my father's father, he had an interest in Garvey. He told me. He introduced me and introduced my mind to Marcus Garvey, my father's father. I spent a lot of time with him too. And so I'm sure that when I made it known what direction I was going, my grandfathers, they weren't surprised, not one little bit. That seemed to me that that's what they were hoping, that's what they were desiring, a movement in that direction. I share that with you to justify or to make the point that when Imam W. Muhammad told me in his daughter's living room, you are a combination of me and my father, that not that he wouldn't tell me something that's truthful, but I bear witness that was a true statement. I understand it now. I didn't then. I understand it now. And he also said to me, I came to him once, not complaining. I never complain to him. I don't complain. I'm not a complainer. But I was giving him, we were having a conversation, and he was asking me something, and I was giving him a response to what he was asking me. And in the context of that response, I said to him, he said to me, he said, you can't spy for me. That's what he said. Quote, you can't spy for me. He said, you come in the room, they change the channel right away. He said, we're linked. And then I said to him, they say, they critique me or criticize and say that I sound like you. And then he said to me, who they want you to sound like? And then he said someone's name. I won't tell you who it was. One of the imams. He was making a joke about it, but he was serious too. Who they want you to sound like. In other words, who should you be sounding like? Should you sound like one of them? That's what they want. Right. So what am I saying? I'm saying that the moral conscience is formed in our leadership. It has been established in our leadership. And it is the model moral conscience, not just for us, but for humans, because it patterns itself upon Muhammad the Prophet's leadership and his thinking. Prophet Muhammad didn't introduce rituals for the sake of ritual. Ritual practices in Islam were derived from the responsibility of the Prophet in his relationship with God as a covenant to secure and to protect and to defend the role of the moral conscience. So these practices were derived from this. This is the processes of the light securing in a form, a vessel that's going to carry truth. So these rituals, they're containers holding a lot of information. But human beings are the ones that are the vessels themselves. It's human life. It's the life of human community. We don't know anything about the Salat except in the expression of the human community, right? The Islamic community. That's where we see Salat. Say, well, birds pray and the rooster prays and all these animals. Yeah, the Quran says that all of them know their prayer. All of them know their standard of worship. But what is it talking about? It's talking about all of them know their nature. They're acting in their instinctual integrity that God has given all of them an excellence. Everything that he has created. That's what it means that he says he has made everything from water with a moral purity. All right, I'll conclude with that. Let me just say this. Do you know who is Wallace D. Muhammad's mother? Clara Poole. Just think on that a little while. Want to know what formed him? Clara Poole. And who was Elijah? Elijah in the Bible brought fire down from heaven. You want to see the establishment and the structural integrity of the moral conscience as it formed in the life of a people, study on that a little while. The son of Clara and Elijah. Okay, well, thank you very much. Praise be to Allah. So if we have some questions, then we'll take those questions for the next hour. If we're, oh, we have some people here. All right, wonderful.
So, can everyone in the Zoom hear me? Okay, so we should have the audio issues fixed. So if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. And those of you who are here with us, let's make sure that.
Assalamu alaikum, Imam.
Wa alaikum assalam.
My question is, how do you get the non-power for benefit?
Okay. So the where do we go to get information on what is sacred matter in Islam? We go to the guidance, and the guidance is the Quran, and also the guidance is the Sunnah of Muhammad, the way of Muhammad. And I want to take some time to answer you, all right? Qadr. Qadr is Allah says in the Quran, Huwa a'la kulli shay'in qadir. His determination is over everything. His determination is over everything. Huwa a'la kulli shay'in qadir. Also, he says, Huwa a'la kulli shay'in shaheed. His witness is over everything. So the qadr is a term referencing purpose, the reason for things, the purpose of things. And we believe in the qadr. We believe in the determination that God has given to everything. We believe that everything has been created for a purpose, that it has an importance, an integrity. It has a definite design. Everything that Allah has created, everything, even something as simple as snowflake. If you study the snowflake, you take it and look at it, you under a microscope, it has a design, and it has precision, symmetry, perfection. This is all part of the qadr, part of the determination of God, all right? This building that we're in, this building, any building that's worth anything, takes its design from standards that have been established in creation, all right? So a human being will look at the world itself and structure its living quarters according to what the world itself will accommodate. It can't stand, a building can't stand except that it stand on a firm foundation, right? And there's certain angles that have to be respected, and other characteristics that make up what is necessary to have a structure that will pass the codes in a city, right? I once wanted to open a store in Alexandria, Virginia, all right? And it was a cell phone store. And it was in the Old Town, Alexandria. So Old Town has these building codes, and I didn't know all the rules, so I hung up my sign, and I got a letter in the mail saying, oh no, you need to come before the building code people and give some justification for this. And so they gave me what the standards were, and I said, oh, okay, I didn't know about that. I should have informed me, but I was a young person, and so I learned a great deal from that. But Qadr is referring to these rules of order that are derived from what God has made and the purpose for which he has made it. So within that purpose are rules, okay, that govern how things are managed, how they're treated, how you approach them. So if you approach it correctly, there's a reward. If you approach it incorrectly, there is a punishment. All right? So this is part of the Qadr. So Laylatul Qadr, the night of the determination. All right? That's the literal translation. What does Allah says in the Quran about it? Because people ask, like you did. Allah says it. He's revealed. وَمَا أَدَرَاكَ مَا لَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ وَمَا أَدَرَاكَ مَا لَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ. What is the night of power? This is the Quran. And the answer come right behind it. لَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ خَيْرٌ مِّنْ أَلْفِ شَهْرٍ. It is better than 1,000 months. Which what? Estimate about 80 years. A lifetime. It is better than a lifetime, a human lifetime. It is more excellent than a human lifetime. So what is that saying? That a human lifetime is outweighed by one night. So the whole span of humanity is defined for its purpose, for its determination in one night. Allah says in the Quran, continue. تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر. In it, he sends down the angels. The angels. Okay. Who are the angels? Malaika. The identification of their importance is in the language itself. Malaika. What is malaika? It's related to mulk. Mulk is the dominion. Dominion meaning that which Allah has made, everything that he has made, that he is the malik of the mulk. He is the owner. He is the possessor. He controls it. He manages it. It's under his power and control. He is Maliki Yawmiddin. He is Maliki Yawmiddin and he's Maliki Yawmiddin. Two words similar in meaning, but having a shade of difference. Malik is the owner. Malik is king. Mulk is the dominion. Malaika is the agents of the king working in his interest upon his command. So God says that he sent down the angels. And what? The ruh. He sent down the ruh, the spirit. What is that? The spirit is what Prophet Muhammad described. The agent that is expressing in man's life and determination God's will. So here is the descending of the angels and God's will supporting the development of human society. All right? That is the importance of it. Now how do we know this? This upon every command. So this is by Allah's command. For what? Salamun hiya hatta madal fajr. Salamun is what? Peace. Salam, peace, right? Peace. The word peace. You know, Prophet Muhammad, before Prophet Muhammad was preaching, what is Islam? What is a Muslim? Defining this, they had this word in the Arabic language, salam. They knew the word. They knew the word salam. They didn't know the word Islam. He had to teach them the meaning of Islam. They knew how to approach the meaning, but they didn't know the meaning. He had to tell them, what is Islam? So the society of Islam, the establishment of Islamic order, the determination for human society, what God intends for human society, the purpose, structure, destiny for human society. That's all in what? The way we greet one another. The greeting in the paradise is not assalamu alaikum, it's salam. Peace. Hatta matla al-fajr. Until what? Human beings wake up. Yeah. Not wake up to their moral responsibility, but wake up to the challenge of the world and the influence of the shaitan. So this discussion is in Muhammad's soul. All right? This is in his soul. And God sent down to him this clarification for how he should direct himself. Because this movement in him has come to a point where now he has welcomed and requisitioned guidance. He has requisitioned guidance. He is in need of guidance. The excellence of his nature has been established. He has emptied himself out of the entire influence of his society and the world. He is the pure human now needing guidance to straighten out the world. That's better than one life that encompasses the whole human experience. And that is the value of Laylatul Qadr. And so when we observe or recognize it, that is what we should be reflecting on. The revelation of Allah to his servant. Read in the name of your Lord that creates. Praise be to Allah.
Okay, Sister Imam, go ahead and unmute your microphone.
Okay, thank you. All right. Assalamu alaikum, Imam, and everyone, and Ramadan Mubarak.
Assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Mubarak.
Yes, sir. And okay, and I do want to thank you so very much for this Ramadan session, and thank all of those that you surrounded yourself with to help put this technological advancement together. It works for us because I think I could speak for everybody and say we really would rather be there with you guys, to be among believers with that same sensitivity and understanding of what our role and our path is as it relates to um, our need for establishing ourselves in the framework of what Allah has intended us as a people. And so I had a couple of questions, and they may tie in, but I was looking at an ayah, and I wanted to have you elaborate, because as we think in terms of whether we have the need to establish or have the responsibility and accountability to establish as a people uh, for the works that are required for establishing moral consciousness and for the society as a whole, not just for ourselves. This ayat is 27, Surah 27, ayat 83, and it says, and it's said in many ways throughout the Quran, but one day we shall gather together from every people a troop of those who reject our signs, and they shall be kept in ranks until when they come before the judgment seat. Allah will say, did ye reject my signs, though ye comprehended them not in knowledge, or what was it ye did? But so much the reference to a people, a people that, so I wanted you to elaborate on that idea of us as a people. And then also, you mentioned earlier, you said from time to time, you talked about the significance of headdress and what it means in terms of what it signifies. And when I listened to something I saw the other day, it caught my attention because in Mosque Mariam, they were having Jummah. And I thought that at some point, because I saw Imam Muhammad and Imam or Minister Farrakhan, bridging, as you mentioned, Imam Muhammad wasn't much to argue, but he stood firm for truth. And I said, the people over there, particularly the younger ones, are going to search for that horizon that you talked about. They're going to search beyond any idea of them having this godness among them, about themselves, and look for higher. And this is where they're going to find it. And you said that they are the people that actually receive you with greater regard and respect. And so when he was delivering the khutbah, Minister Farrakhan indicated that some sheikh from overseas had given him a crown or a fez, and he was wearing it, and he mentioned it and talked so highly about it. He said Imam Muhammad had his work to do, and he did a great job, and he established more people that, very, they have a major grasp of Quran. And he said, but we have our work to do as well. And so I wonder, was that like bridging over to us, or was that some way for the sheikh to maybe establish some leadership, in some way with the crown, the hat? So what does that mean, again, in terms of what you're wearing?
It's the habit of leaders and also people representing the interests of their people, whether they're in the leadership or just they're representing leadership, to offer gifts to one another. Um, And there's definitely something to be taken from the nature of the gift, whatever the gift is. There's a lesson in it. There's some message being sent. I never saw Imam W. Muhammad wear anyone's headdress except ours. I saw that he was given cloaks, robes, and I saw that he wore some things sometimes on special occasions, but he didn't put anything on his head that wasn't either from us directly or universal. If we're putting something on our head, or if someone's offering something to us that belongs on our head, that goes on our head, they're telling us that that should be the character of your leadership. And if they offer us something that's universal, they're pointing to Muhammad the Prophet's leadership. If they're offering something that's cultural, they're pointing to themselves. So I don't know what the headdress was that they gave him, but they're telling him definitely, you need a leader. Farrakhan, he has a lot of experience. So if he put it on, he's not stupid. I don't know what he's saying to his people, but I wouldn't want to comment further on that. I just leave it like that. The verse from the Quran. There are many verses in the Quran that point out or give us a scene of judgment. And the judgment is what? It is the setting for how a people or an individual position themselves according to the reality of truth. And nothing excuses people from truth except insanity, or the responsibility that's associated with truth. Nothing excuses you from that except insanity. You can't discern truth. Something has made you not appreciate truth, or you haven't been in a situation where you've been educated as to what truth is or how to recognize truth. Those people are excused because that's a form of insanity. In the Quran, the term that's used is a term that means to cover over something. The term that means insane or without sanity. It refers to the covering over of something. And in this case, it's the covering over of facts. But there are also people that have access to truth and want to argue with truth or want to deny truth. And this is the term in the Quran that refers to the disbelievers, the rejectors. And it gives other characteristics, descriptions of the disbelievers, that they are liars, that they are people that advance falsehoods, that they are corrupt, that they are loaded up with sin, making excuses for their corruption rather than correcting themselves. All these different characteristics, that they're fakers, pretenders, schemers, All of this is in the Quran in one form or another. So when it speaks of the ranks, it's talking about these various classifications of disbelievers, and that their disbelief will be exposed, and the particular characteristics of that disbelief will be made known. So they will be separated or distinguished from one another. That this is a category of disbelief. Here's another one. Here's another group. So that's the explanation, or that's one explanation for that. And let me clarify something too. I want to make this clear. I have received messages from members of the Nation of Islam that are sincere. And I know that some of these people that are interested in the future of the Nation of Islam, they're interested in their own, they belong to the Nation of Islam, and they're interested in the future of the Nation of Islam. And they like me in part because they recognize that I'm closely associated with Imam W. Deen Mohammed. And they trust Imam W. Deen Mohammed. They trusted him. They knew, or they sensed, that the direction that he went could be trusted, because here's a man who is the son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and has, from their point of view, a way of approaching the value of the Nation of Islam teaching. So they don't feel like them having been members of the Nation of Islam will be disrespected with him as leader. So when they look at me, they say, he's like that. He's the same, So they feel comfortable with that. I understand that. And there are others among them that know that there is no direction to go for them except the Quran. They know that. They sense that. And that's what they want to do. But I respect them for being loyal to their own leadership. I wouldn't want to see someone go away from the Nation of Islam and come with us and then say bad things about Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. I wouldn't want to see that, and I wouldn't want to have people around me like that. So I don't respond to these messages that I get. I get them, but I don't respond to them. And what I was pointing out was that their expressions to me are expressions of sincerity. And their expressions to me are expressions of, I wouldn't say support, but I would say, I pray for you that you're successful. And if I'm going to accept that a Christian say that to me, why wouldn't I accept that a member of the Nation of Islam say that? Because let's be honest about it. The Nation of Islam idea is nothing but, well, I shouldn't say nothing but the Nation of Islam idea in one picture is a kind of black Christianity in one frame, okay? The Quran does away with the logic that creation is God, or humans are God, or humans can be God. The Quran, Muhammad the Prophet's leadership, does away with that. So the real God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he accepts sincere devotion. He accepts innocence. Now, the expression of sincere devotion has to be in line with what Prophet Muhammad established and what the Quran establishes as truth. But the quality of sincerity is never rejected by Allah. So if a person believes that the real God is as the Imam said once, a potato, does the real God punish that person? No. Because that devotion in time will find the real God. Because God has made his nature to find it. Look at what happened to us. The Nation of Islam membership, they call him Mr. Farad God in the flesh. Well, it took some time, but eventually that got corrected, right? A movement in the soul of the people, expressed in and through Imam W. Muhammad's leadership. So I view their interest in me as their interest in Imam W. Muhammad's leadership. That's how I view it. And it's sincere. I believe it's sincere. And what I was comparing it to was the fact that you all here, assembled here today, and you all who are with us on the Zoom, and those who are watching on other venues, you know that there's no imam in this community teaching like I am. You know it. You're not being honest if you say other than that. You're just not being honest. And what is the problem? The problem is that you don't want to be set apart from a social group that you belong to. You belong to a network of people, a network of friends. You belong to a masjid, and you're seen as a supporter of the local imam, and you don't want to be set aside from that, though you recognize the truth. That's your dilemma, and you got to carry it. But many of you who have been in a similar kind of situation have made a decision that I'm not carrying that. So that's the problem that I have with our own folks and with the leaders. You see the truth and you reject. Well, where does that go? According to the Quran. To the hellfire. It can't go anywhere else. That's where it's going. So, those of you that know, if you haven't already done it, and you have some life in you, and you have some credibility in this community, you need to go to some of these others and pull them aside and speak some truth to them. Say, hey, brother, you need to straighten yourself up, honestly. Hey, sister, let me talk to you about the reality of this. And you don't have to agree, but you should at least present them with the matter as it stands. And if they come back to you and say, well, he's a criminal, let it go. What else can you do? Let it go. Allah will establish what he wants to establish in the time he wants to establish it. So I hope that's helpful to you, sister. Amen.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
That last piece you said really resonated with me. Alhamdulillah. So I just want to know if you could speak a little bit more about the term Munawwarah, and maybe a little, I don't want to get too nerdy, but the grammatical construction of it, how you talk about it being like the process of light and how light works, and then maybe if you could maybe connect that a little bit to how that manifests in Ma'ruf.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I want to answer with references from the Quran. Okay. So um, I'm not certain of this, but I'm not guessing. I'm not guessing either, but I'm not certain of it. I can't give you direct reference to this. But the fact that Al-Munawarrah is a term universally used to describe Medina by the Arabic-speaking Muslims and their learned people, and also Muslims who have a tradition of knowledge all around the world. They use the term. Would say to me that there's something specifically in Prophet Muhammad's teaching, specifically to him, that would have invited them to conclude that they should refer to it in that way. That's first. Anything that Prophet Muhammad said, we can find the foundation of it in the Quran itself. So the Kaaba, the term light is associated with the Kaaba. The term light is associated with Masjid Al-Aqsa as well. And the way that the terms are used suggests that light is to illuminate the importance of the situation, to bring clarity by way of light. What is so offensive to Muslims with regard to the treatment of Masjid Al-Aqsa by the government authority is that the light is a universal, just in the same way that the sun belongs to all that it serves, all life that it serves. No one can say that they own the power of the sun and the light of the sun. It belongs to humanity. So does the light of guidance that is associated with Masjid Al-Aqsa belong to humanity. So for a government authority to suggest that that place should only be seen in the context of that people's life is, for Muslims, not just offensive, it is forbidden. It is an offense to the human construct of human life. It's an offense to the construct of human life. What would we think if Saudi Arabia made Mecca or Medina the capital of Saudi Arabia? Muslims would be outraged. Mecca and Medina do not belong to Saudi Arabia. Mecca and Medina belong to mankind. So in grammar, there is what is called and I can't think of the word in Arabic grammar right now, but there's a term in English that refers to active participle of the verb, all right? And where we see it not all the time do we see it this way, but most times we see it this way. Meme in Arabic, meme, the M sound, is an indicator of the active participle, all right? So wherever we see the meme, it brings a personality or the activity of an entity on that verb, okay? So, for example, Hassan means good. And by extension, Hassan means formed in good, which can mean beautiful or handsome. Hassan. I have a grandson, Hassan. I have a son, Muhsin, the doer of good. So Muhsin has that meaning. So acting upon the verb, right? The verb is action, but this is a personification or an institution or a person acting upon the verb, all right? Muhsin, a doer of good. Muhammad, one giving praise. And so forth, okay? We can, Muslim, one acting on peace, and so forth. Mu'min, one believing, one having faith, mu'min. So Munawwarah. So nur, and now it's intensified. Now I saw the spelling that we used. That was my mistake. The ra is not. I don't know how many of you all know what I'm speaking of now, but I don't want to lose you in this discussion, all right? So in Arabic, there's a way to intensify something, all right? And it's used a symbol called shadda, and it intensifies something, and it doubles the sound, okay? So munawwarah, the shadda is over the wow, the wah sound, not the ra. But the way we spelled it in the advertisement, it was the double R. It's not correct. When I looked at it, I said, oh, we made a mistake there. I made that mistake. Imam Ibrahim didn't make that mistake. Imam Ibrahim makes mistakes, but he didn't make that one. We all make mistakes. I thank Allah that we have the sensitivity between us to cover each other's mistakes. He covered mine, I covered his. We don't even mention it to one another. I know he sees something, he said, Imam didn't mean that. He changed it. I look at it again and say, he fixed it. Thank Allah for that. So, nur, light. And nur, the light. All right? Nawwarah. Use of light, or to enlighten. Munawwarah, an institution using the light to enlighten. And in this case, a city. Medina Al-Munawwarah. A society using the light to enlighten. Enlighten what? What is the light in this society? What is the light? It is the moral conscience. It is a reflection of Allah's guidance. So, and fire, the fire. And the light of the sun is called siraj, a torch. Fire burning, gases, siraj, torch. Munir is the light of the moon. Munir, similar, close to Munawwarah, right? Close. Munir, borrowed light. So Munawwarah, the light source is not the city. The light source is the one who gives guidance upon which the city establishes itself. So it's taking from that light and it's using it in an intensified form to enlighten. So what does it mean essentially? It means that it is a model. It is an example. Al-Munawarrah. And so we can use the same reasoning to understand the term ma'ruf. Ma'ruf. Arafa means to know. To know. Allah says that He created humanity from a male and a female. He created min dhakarin wa untha wa ja'alnakum, and He made it such that they be organized in nations and tribes. And those are designations, very important designations. There's real students of the Quran that want to draw from it what is necessary to build society. They understand and want to understand exactly what Allah is saying here. So political movements and the spirit of political movements that are governed by Islamic authority find peace and security in verses like this from the Quran. Because then the conclusion is what? Why Allah designated them into nations and tribes? Li ta'arafu, that they will know each other. Arafa, no. Arrafa. Intense now, right? To teach. It's another word for teaching. By way of recognition, observation, and recognition. Arafat. What is Arafat? High recognition. High recognition. What is so special and important about Arafat at the Hajj? That is so important until even if you make the circuits and you do the other rituals, you won't get credit for the Hajj unless you are present on the 9th day of Hajj, of Dhul Hijjah, which is the day of Arafat. When you are there with whom? The human family. Getting to know one another. Having discussion, listening to the lectures of the learned people, or anyone who has good intent. But it is also the place where God took His covenant from Adam. It is also the place of ascension for mankind on the Day of Judgment, according to Prophet Muhammad's teaching. Arafah, high place of recognition. So ma'ruf, the highest standards of recognition of values that are shared in the common life of humanity to promote the best conditions for man on this earth. Ma'ruf. Bringing that recognition into reality as systems. That's ma'ruf. Systems. Because ma'ruf is also, the Quran uses the term ma'ruf is used to describe how men should treat women, which is another way of saying how the intellect should treat the womb. Society is female. Society is female. All right? Gender. So we speak of cities and they're she. They have gender. Medina is female gender, city, female gender. So the intellect that acts upon the city, male and female, not men and women, male and female, if you understand. Now, some people, they approach the city with the wrong intent, and they want something out of it, and they approach it not sending it the proper respect. That's not ma'ruf. That's not the proper treatment. There's some immigrants that look at America as a prostitute. That's what they see in America, a big prostitute. They're gonna get what they want out of it, right? Yeah, I could use some language. I ain't gonna use it though. I'm just thinking about R Street, Pennsylvania Avenue, Southeast Washington, D.C. That's what just came through my mind. And some guys that I grew up with. I won't repeat their language. All right, but ma'ruf is to put into principle the proper recognition and respect of standards of living that support the development of decency, put into systems. That's ma'ruf. So I'll conclude with this, Sister Farida. Prophet Muhammad, he was asked, what is Islam? He gave an answer. And that answer is to be embodied in Muslim. And he was asked, what is correct behavior? And the word in Arabic for correct behavior is ihsan. And the manifestation of that in the intellect and as an active agent is muhsin, doer of right action. And then what is the manifestation of faith? Actionable. Because the Prophet was asked, what is faith? What is belief? What is iman? And the actionable response to that is mu'min. So these important terms can't exist just as a concept. It has to live. And the meme in Arabic makes it live. All right. Yes, sir. Wa alaikum assalam.
So you mentioned the Laylatul Qadr, and it's better than 1,000 months, but technically means a whole lifetime. Is there a connection when Muhammad the Prophet, and the peace and blessings be upon him, received revelation? His qualification was that he had already lived a lifetime amongst you. Is there a connection?
Definitely. So let me say this. I said this once to Imam Hashim in a conversation that he and I had. I appreciate the questions, and it gives us opportunity to elaborate on important concepts. But you all should know something about your own nature. If you feel strongly that something is connected, it's connected. It's absolutely connected. Your nature is not going to lead you incorrectly. You know it's something there, all right? When you ask a question, you're asking for clarification and more information about what you already know. It's clear. Prophet Muhammad is said, given in the Quran, to say, I'm immortal, just like you. And abasharun mithlukum. Mithlukum, all right? And another place in the Quran, as you said, Imam Frank, and incidentally, when I was the Imam in Baltimore, he was my partner in that work. So he's known me for a long time in the work. That's how we were introduced to each other. The Quran says that he has lived a lifetime among you. And the suggestion is already he has lived a lifetime among you. So that's akin to mithlukum. Mithlukum. So Prophet Muhammad has a life among his people that is well established. They can't separate themselves from him. They are the ones that gave him his name, his nickname. Al-Amin. Al-Amin was his nickname. He didn't get that to himself. As-Sadiq, another name that he was called. They gave him that name, the trustworthy. They called him that. They didn't just refer to him. They called him by name. They called him Al-Amin. So that's an indication that he was established among them. His wife, Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, very opinionated, strong in her opinions. And I don't want to say something that would be interpreted as not reverent, so I won't say that. Strong in her opinions, all right? And she would ask the Prophet about their relationship. And he would give a description of the relationship. Said it was like a knot. And so she would ask, how's the knot? Occasionally, she would ask these questions frequently of him. When she became annoyed, for lack of a better term, with the Prophet, I can't imagine that, but Prophet Muhammad separated from his wives for a time. She wouldn't call him the messenger of God. She said she would call him Muhammad, the son of Abdullah. It's another indication that he had a lifetime that preceded or that was adjacent to his lifetime as the messenger of God. All right. So we have a lifetime where we are struggling to recognize and embrace the value of our true selves. And then once we have that and we meet with information from God as to what direction we should have for our true selves, then we have another lifetime. So the African American people, if we look at our lifetime over the span, we have the lifetime up until Deen Mohammed and the time after. That's the way I look at it. Now, some people might look at it up to Mr. Farad, which is the same thing, in my opinion. Wallace D. Muhammad, who is W.F. Muhammad and W.D. Farad, finds his plan in its desired conclusion in Imam W. Deen Mohammed. And what did Imam W. Mohammed say to us about himself? He said, I follow Imam W. Deen Mohammed. Imam W. Mohammed is my Imam. That's also an indication of 2 lifetimes. So all of us live a time before enlightenment and after enlightenment. And the Quran says that 40 is the age of strength. So prior to 40, you're developing. At 40, another life. And the Quran says in another place, and many, not just one other place, but many places, says that life evolves from this stage to this stage to this stage to this stage, and it gets to a point, and then Allah says, then He makes another creation. So again, another life. And we talked about the brother Daryl. He asked about the 2 tablets, and I thought about that as well. And that's another Old Testament and New Testament. Old Testament is one expression of truth. New Testament, another expression of truth. One life, 2 realities for the development toward the destiny. But the Quran, when it looks at the body of revelation that preceded it, it's one expression. So I think that's plenty references. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
I just want to thank you first for this Ramadan and all the information you've given me. I've been still chewing on it, like the date that you gave me last Ramadan.
Yes, sir.
So I'm doing a lot for that. I just want to say first that I did have a dream. I was telling Dahan about it, that I was dying in my dream. It wasn't a scary dream though. I was very calm, but for some reason 6 o'clock was in my dream, the time I was going to die. So in passing, what you said this morning to the brother about the 33 numbers, you said about 6. That 6 is a new life. So I was like, alhamdulillah, that's probably something dying in me for me to become a new father. So
yeah, I like that. That's a good interpretation.
Maybe it wasn't, but
no, that's a good interpretation.
okay. Alhamdulillah. So my question to you is, I've stumbled upon your article about when Muhammad Ali asked you the question, why do people try to keep you in sin when you are trying to get out of sin? Also, do they become sinful when trying to keep you in sin? And I was thinking about this world of confusion and becoming a new father. So I wanted to know, what advice would you give to believing parents into how to raise their kids in this confusing and sinful world?
Wow, that's a big question. And believe me, I'm struggling with it too. My daughter, she told me, Daddy, you have children in every decade. I never thought of it like that. Yes, so I'm with you on that question. So I'm not very successful when it comes to this, what I'm getting ready to tell you. I'm still working on it myself. I consider myself a good parent, but I'm still working on this particular thing. And I think it'd be helpful to you if you think about it. And you'll have time to think about it and how it might work in your reality with your child. But I want to get to the point with my children that are still somewhat under my influence, to not be able to say no to them. And there's a reason for it. Not that I don't want to say no, but I want them to learn to say no. I want them to develop the awareness to know what to say no to. The sensitivities for, and if you can learn what to say no to, you'll be good. Because whatever you're saying no to, the idea is that it's not good for you, right? It's not good for you. So you're going to stay on the path if you can say no. You know, you look at that situation, nope, can't do that. Can't do that, you know, and eventually it becomes a situation where you don't have to say no to anything. You're free to move. You're not fearing any influence because you know you're strong in the situation, you know. That's the idea. And that's what is meant when we say La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. When we say no, nothing to be worshipped except Allah, that disciplines you and it frees you at the same time. Because if you have disciplined yourself to recognize that which will oppress you, you're free. You have a free conscience. You move as you need to move and know that your Lord is going to support you because you don't mean anything but good. I'd like to quote one I read from the former, past liberation leader of India, Gandhi. He had an interesting strategy for the liberation of his people. Very interesting strategy. And he said, one thing I like that he said, I can look any man in his face because I mean him no harm. It's very simple, but it's very clear as to what his philosophy was. Be honorable, be decent, according to your own convictions, and you can stand anywhere in the world. So, that would be my advice to you. And I take that myself, and like I said, I'm working on it. I want my children to be able to know what to say no to. And so my instruction to them and my example to them is to help them develop that skill set. And, you know, all of us should consult what would Prophet Muhammad do in this situation, you know. And I even say, and I don't ask other people to do this, and maybe some people think, well, you know, that's not necessary, but I do it because we have a set of circumstances, you know, and for other reasons too. But I say to myself too, in that discipline, I ask myself, what would Imam W. Muhammad do? Because see, for me, I understand my role to be what he designated that to be. So I stay myself in that, like my children say, in that lane. You know, that's what they say to each other. They don't say me. They don't say, "Daddy, stay in your lane." They don't tell me that, but they tell each other that. I had to ask. I like that expression. What is that? It means keep to what you know. You know, don't get over here in my concern. Stay right there where you're supposed to be. So I know where I belong. I know where I belong. I belong in this lane that was designated for me by Wallace D. Muhammad, son of Elijah Muhammad. That's where I'm going to stay. I'm not moving out of that lane. I want to be there. I'm comfortable. And for me, that lane is huge. I can move around and maneuver and do all kinds of things in that lane, you know, and be acceptable. And I'm very comfortable in it, as you can see. I'm very comfortable in it. So, I wouldn't give you any advice that I don't wouldn't accept for myself. And I think that if you can help your children discipline themselves to know what to push away from, then that's good. And it comes from, like I said, it comes from Islamic influence. The first statement of witness and faith for Muslims begins with no. La. And la is an absolute no. There are other no's in Arabic, okay? But not la. La is an absolute. La means ever, never, forever, period, finished, done, no more discussion. That's why that statement of witness is so profound. La ilaha illallah. No God except the God. So that's where my advice comes from.
I think that's it.
All right. So break. Thank you.
Okay, for those of you who are joining us in Zoom, thank you, as well as those of you who are watching on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. We'll go ahead and close the Ramadan session out. What we will try and do is we had some issues with the internet connection the last couple of days. For those of you watching live stream, there may have been like some video and audio issues. We're going to re-upload the recording that we have so that if there's any part of it that you missed because of the limited bandwidth, you'll be able to watch that again. So thank you, Brother Imam, and thank all of you. Assalamu alaikum.
So what's the time? Oh, we got a few minutes. Huh?
Record.
So, you know, in the Muslim lands during the month of Ramadan, the way that the believers, they know the time to break the fast when they hear that adhan for Maghrib. And then some places they have sounds like a cannon